Welcome to the Path to Follow podcast. This is episode number 32. I'm here with Dressel. Del was a teammate of my dad's back in the 80s at Johns Hopkins, and they had a very successful year in 84. So maybe we can, Del, start talking about 84 championship team at Hopkins and maybe some of your memories from playing with my dad back in the day.
Well, I'd like to get started with that, Jake. And before I do, I want to say thank you for this opportunity to come back to my alma mater here at Gilman, class of 81. It's been a while since I've been down in this building here right now. It brings back some good memories. And, it's great to be here. You know, I do want to start off with a little disclaimer, though, is that I don't know, tonight, as I'm getting a little older here, I find that when I talk about some positive memories, I get a little teary-eyed, and sometimes it's probably going to happen tonight. And I got a 9-year-old son, and he's still trying to figure it out. He's often like, "Hey, Mom, Dad's crying again." He's watching a music video, and it's not even that sad. and I try to explain to him that that it's okay to sometimes cry when you're having some happy thoughts, not just sad thoughts. And of course, he's like, "Dad, that makes no sense. You're making me uncomfortable. Stop crying." So with that said, I'm going to talk about some happy times tonight, and maybe I won't cry, but if I do, it's okay.
Yeah, it's okay. Totally. Let it out.
Yeah, I'll let it out. A little nervous being here. To be honest, it's a little difficult for me to talk about myself, especially because there's been some successes that I've been part of, like
for sure,
these lacrosse championships, and as I talk about what my teammates and I did, it's a little, and I'm not used to it. It's been years since I talked about some of these things.
Yeah.
But in any event, what would we're going to talk about Hopkins lacrosse? Is that what we're talking about to start?
Yeah, let's start out with Hopkins lacrosse and maybe your time, maybe in 84. I've seen they have like the full games on YouTube now. You can kind of watch some of the replays from those championships, 84 and 85. And I was telling you before we came in, we were talking about my dad. I guess you were there too, right? 81, 82, 83 were losses in the national championship, and finally in 84, you guys got a victory against Syracuse. So maybe we can talk about the year 1984, playing lacrosse at Hopkins, and what that was like for you.
All right, that's good. Your dad, Peter Scott, Flea, great guy, love him. We're good friends, and he was first team All-American, and he had gone 0 for 3. He was part of that senior class that had not won a championship, and that was right around. I guess Hopkins had won 78, 79, and 80, and then North Carolina came onto the scene and won in 1981 and 82. So your father was part of those losses, and of course my freshman year, 83, we lost to Syracuse. That was the first year where Syracuse had come onto the scene, I believe since the great Jim Brown had played in the late 1950s. Could be wrong about that, but I'm pretty sure. But in any event, Hopkins had lost 3, and one of them was my freshman year, 83. But in 84, the senior class, your dad and Dickie Glancy and a number of other people that come to my mind, really wanted it, and we went undefeated that year, and we wound up beating Syracuse, avenging our loss the year before, and that was up at Delaware.
Yeah.
And I have fond memories of that, sure.
Yeah. We're on the podcast, one of the things I'm doing is doing like special topics sessions for 30, 40 minutes with certain people on specific areas of interest. And this week we recorded an episode with Coach Nostrand here on building championship teams. And we were talking a little bit about what goes into the culture of a championship team, especially an undefeated team like that.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe 84 undefeated season, the seniors really wanted it. What about your team made you guys so successful? Was there a certain tone set by the seniors that year, or was there's a different feeling that year since they hadn't won 81, 82, 83 that set your team apart? I mean, undefeated season is so hard to come by.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yes, I'm getting goose pimples here thinking about that year.
Hopkins on the season is a 36% effectiveness. Yeah, 36% effectiveness in this extra man play. Saved by Nims on the attempt by Dressel. Dressel fights to keep it alive and puts it in from an incredible falling angle. Dressel, his 27th of the season, and Hopkins is back up on top, 11. Dressel with 40 seconds to go. Double team. Keeps possession. Dressel. Angle key. Shot. Goal! And for all intents and purposes, that is the game. With 32 seconds to play. 23 seconds. There's Ciccarone. To Eric Dressel. In front, the shot over the top by Ciccarone with 7 seconds. 5 seconds as the ball remains on the field of play. And that's it. The senior class will not graduate empty-handed at Johns Hopkins.
It was nice. Now, of course, we've got to start with back in the early 80s, there really wasn't as many great lacrosse teams out there as there is now. Now there's so many great teams that the talent is spread out all over the country. There were a handful of teams, maybe a little bit more, that got most of the talent. And Hopkins, we had a lot. So yeah, on that team, we had some big name players, and so to start with, we had talent, and we had that edge that the senior class had been 0 for 3, and they wanted it, and we were a classy team. Good guys, nice guys. When I think back, we loved one another. We all got along, and we just nice quality people. Don't feel bad saying that. We were just good guys, and we wanted it. And right from the beginning, we had a great senior class leadership. Willie Odenthal was the captain. Your dad, Peter, and Dickie Glancy, and there was a number of other seniors. There was probably about 6 of them, 7 of them. I'm not going to name them all, but they led. They were good leaders, and right from the beginning, we had a saying: nobody messes with us, or something similar to that. That was our saying, nobody, and it just was that word.
Yeah,
before
that.
the games.
I love that.
Before the games, we would get there and we would just get in and go, nobody. and we won, and then we won, and we were winning, and nobody was beating us. And what we had was a tremendous loss the year before to Syracuse.
Right.
So, if you recall what I said a couple minutes ago, 1983. So we got to back up. Hopkins had won 78, 79, 80. They were going for 4. I say they because that wasn't me. Going for 4. Carolina came onto the scene. And Carolina won 1981 and 82. So the following year, my freshman year, we wanted to beat Carolina. And we had never heard of Syracuse. Syracuse hadn't been on the scene yet. But we wanted to beat Carolina. That's who we were thinking about. And fortunately, we beat them in the semifinals. But then there was this team called Syracuse. They'd been up north and they were winning big, and we were concentrating on Carolina. And we went into the game up there at Rutgers Stadium, and we were beating Syracuse 13-5. We got way up on them. We got way up on them, and that was the beginning where the nation saw the Syracuse onslaught, where they can score immediately a lot. And we wound up losing 17-16.
Waiting now for the all-important face-off. Hopkins much gained possession. That was Timmy Nelson's 6th assist. Still no possession. Davidson flips it back into Holman. Holman had a lot of pressure. Looks upfield. Here comes Hopkins on over to Dressel. He's open. He can shoot. Fire! Score! Dressel with a sensational move, came back left-handed, and there you see it, 50 seconds remaining in this game. Hopkins down by 1, and Coach Henry Ciccarone takes a timeout. Dressel with a great move, rolled back left-handed, and he beats Travis Solomon to the inside. So at the score, Syracuse 17, Johns Hopkins 16.
And it was a tough loss. I remember sitting next to your father on the bus back, and everyone was bumming out. But in any event, with that said, losing, the disappointment that year. Everybody wanted to beat Carolina. We beat Carolina, and then all of a sudden to lose to Syracuse was tough.
Especially in a comeback like that. Yeah.
Oh yeah, it was
devastating.
Tough. So the next year, with your dad being a senior, we wanted to win. And we wanted to beat Syracuse. And that's who we met in the finals. And we were undefeated going into that game. And nobody beat us that year.
That was the slogan for the year, nobody.
Yeah, nobody.
Yeah.
The next year was total domination. And that was in 85, but maybe we'll get to that in a couple of minutes. But yeah, nobody is what we said. We had the T-shirts. Back then it was pretty cool too, because you didn't have the Final Four weekend where you would play on Saturday and Memorial Day. I believe there was only 8 teams that made it to the playoffs, and the quarterfinals were on a Wednesday, and then Saturday was the semis, and then you had a whole week to prepare for the big game. And we at Hopkins were really preparing for Syracuse, and we had T-shirts made, and we were ready. We were ready for that game.
It's interesting how Syracuse quote unquote came out of nowhere when there were so few teams back then who were really good, like Carolina, Hopkins, Maryland, Syracuse. There's only kind of a handful of teams, where now it's like there are countless. Like the top teams outside of the top 20 now have just as high of a shot of winning anything now, because it's so competitive. But it's interesting how you guys weren't even really, in 83, weren't even really thinking much about Syracuse. They kind of just came out of nowhere. And you were maybe more focused on North Carolina that year because the previous years, in 81, 82, right? Because that's when Carolina was really good in those 2 years.
Absolutely, and so I'm sitting here saying, maybe somewhere in the United States, if somebody's watching this as Syracuse fans, like, what do you mean we weren't somebody? We were doing this and that, but yeah, if you look back, I believe 1972, might have been 1971. That was when you first started to have the NCAA championship as we know it now, and certainly it was Cornell and Virginia and Maryland, and yeah, Syracuse wasn't on the scene yet. So, yeah,
and you were in '84, right? You were only a sophomore. You came in '83 was the year that you came to Hopkins?
Well, it was I was a sophomore with freshman standing in '83. When I left Gilman in 1981, I actually went to Harvard for a semester. And I was going to go up there and there's a backstory as to why I picked there, but I got up there and I sort of knew within the first couple months that wasn't right for me. It's tough talking about that because looking back, I disappointed some people. I went up to Harvard and Coach Bob Scalise and Scotty Anderson. They were some good dudes up there at Harvard. And the captain of the team was Mike Davis. He actually played here, football, lacrosse. I played with him in high school. As a freshman, he was a senior, but in any event, went up to Harvard, and it just wasn't right. And I remember sitting up there and saying to myself, I'll never play in a Hopkins, Maryland lacrosse game. And, I wound up getting on the phone, calling my dad. In any event, transferred to Hopkins in the spring of '82. So I was technically a freshman in '82, but I didn't play. I was fortunate to have a year of playing lacrosse over at the Mount Washington Club lacrosse team, which helped me out, get a little something going before my freshman year, which was my sophomore year in '83.
Gotcha. It sounds like lacrosse has always been part of your life, like even, from Gilman to Hopkins to after that. Who introduced you to lacrosse? How did you get involved playing lacrosse? And did you play some other sports too growing up and at Gilman?
I did, but I went to McDonogh for 8 years before I transferred to Gilman, and I think I might have mentioned that to you before. I was at McDonogh for 8 years. I was out there for the first 2 years, was military. Then we did the civilian. I was there for 2 years when they let the young ladies in. And after the 8th grade, I transferred here. But I was riding the school bus, and back then I was on bus number 11 for 8 years. And first, second grade, I can't remember exactly which grade. But I'm riding the school bus with all the older boys, and they all had these lacrosse sticks. So I said to this was before SDX, before the plastic ones had come out. So I said to my mom and dad, I want a lacrosse stick. And so my mom, she, being the great mom she is, she went over to Triangle Sporting Goods, which is Towson Plaza. It's now not Towson Plaza, but it was a strip mall then. So we went to Triangles, and she bought me a wooden stick. So I got on the bus the next day, and I'm hanging out, and somebody says, hey, you got a girl's stick. I'm like, what? He goes, see how skinny that handle is? And of course, I was humiliated. I went home. I was like, this is not working. Dad took me over to Back Rack Raisins. And we went in there, and I remember there's some wooden sticks, and then they had this funny-looking stick up on the wall. It was butterscotch. It was plastic. And my dad's like, do you want to get one of those sticks? I was like, heck no. They'll really tease me if I get one of those things. Well, of course, that was the beginning of STX. And within a couple months, all the dudes on the bus had them, and I bought a yellow one, a yellow 73 head, purple shooting strings. I remember, like, I wish I had that stick, and I just took to it. This would have, tried to figure it out like second, third, fourth grade. I know I was playing back then, but 5th grade at McDonogh was when I really went for it, and. I could talk for the next 10 minutes, 20 minutes about my experience as a little kid over there. I just fell in love with it. Started stringing sticks.
Yeah, the whole deal.
The whole deal over there.
And did you play? So a lot of what we've talked about on the podcast before and conversations really at Gilman are how influential other sports are to playing lacrosse. And I totally agree with that philosophy, like how important it is to play basketball and football and some other sports. And growing up, what other sports did you play that maybe influenced your love for lacrosse or enhanced your ability on the lacrosse field?
Well, I want to be careful not to talk too much about McDonogh here tonight because this is Gilman, and I transferred here, and I want to talk about that. But over there, I was very fortunate, and we had athletics, every day. You would go, and over there I experienced swimming. I learned how to wrestle. The only thing I didn't do over there that I could have done was ride horses. Some people did, but didn't do that. But wrestling, basketball, football, we'd play soccer. I did all that, and first through fourth grade was experiencing all of that. And then in the middle school, we had different seasons, and I didn't do everything. Back then, you would sort of pick in the middle school what you would do for the winter. You would have to pick swimming, you would pick wrestling, you would pick basketball. So I narrowed it down. But my big sports in middle school, basketball. Basketball. Never learned to dribble, though. I was the guy who was taller, so they would make me the shooting forward. So, and they would, I never learned how to dribble. So, when I got here years later at Gilman, and Mr. Bristow was the basketball coach, I never went for basketball. I should have learned to dribble when I was a kid. But football, I was a football player. And 5th and 6th grade at McDonogh, we'd play Calvert. We'd play Calvert, which is a big feeder school for Gilman. And football, lacrosse, basketball. That's what I did in the middle school.
Yeah.
Played baseball for a year, 9 and 10 out there in the community. But once
you had lacrosse stick, no need.
It just, yes, that's what happened.
Yeah. Well, I would agree with you, or I understand your position in basketball. I can't really shoot much either. They always put me down low, tall, right? Couldn't dribble that well, but I think basketball influenced my lacrosse a lot because it's the same movements. And I was saying today, like I think learning how to cut, move off ball is influenced a lot from playing basketball and like working inside and moving in the paint, and it's the same pick and roll action, same kind of movements in basketball that I think translates really well in the lacrosse field for sure. But I'm sure you feel the same way about maybe playing football and some of the other sports you played growing up that influenced your lacrosse game.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well said.
Yeah. What was it like, kind of your freshman, or maybe we can talk about your transfer from McDonogh to Gilman. What led you to make that leap from McDonogh, the rival school? We've had a couple people in here who are McDonogh alumni, and they were talking about the same thing because now they work here, they coach and teach here, and that's one of the questions I asked them. I was like, why'd you guys decide to leave your alma mater in McDonogh and come over to Gilman?
Yeah, that's a long story, but actually it's something that I can explain quickly.
Okay.
But I'll take my time.
Take your time. We have all night here.
It was a big part of my life. Now I'd been to McDonogh and I really was enjoying it. And my 8th grade, I was president of the middle school. I was a successful athlete. In the 8th grade, I had practiced lacrosse over the spring break with the varsity, and I was pretty good in lacrosse. And 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, I was way into lacrosse. And I was the ball boy and saw many a good team come to McDonogh to play us. And back then it was the MSA, the Maryland Scholastic Association, and there was Calvert Hall, Loyola, Boys Latin, St. Paul's, Gilman, and McDonogh. And I might be fact-checked here, but I'm pretty sure that for those 5 years that McDonogh did not win a game. This was in the 70s, late 70s, early mid 70s. So I was watching, and we would play Calvert Hall twice, once at our house, once at their house. We'd play St. Paul's. We'd play everybody 2 times, 10 games, and McDonogh was always 0 for 10. So, yeah, I really wasn't putting it together all those years that I wanted to leave McDonogh. I was happy at McDonogh. There's good people out there, good friends. And it was coming to the award night, I guess May, June, whatever, after the week right after school ended. There was a award night was coming up, and I knew that I was up for a couple awards. I wound up getting a big award, the all-around boy, 40% leadership, 30% scholarship, 30% athletics. It was a good award. So I certainly, knowing that was coming up, I really wasn't trying to leave prior to award night. But that happened that night. And we wound up, I'm pretty sure, we went to Friendly's Ice Cream up in Towson. And my mom and my dad were there, and we just had, had a moment where we were like, it's been 8 good years. Lacrosse is your love, and what do we want to do?
Mm-hmm.
And do you want to stay at McDonogh? And of course, this was June, and we hadn't applied anywhere. So I was like, maybe we should go somewhere else. Thought about St. Paul's. My brothers were at St. Paul's. That was pretty cool, but I didn't want to go there. My brothers went there, and then all of a sudden, I don't know who said it, like my mom, my dad, me, like, what about Gilman? I'm like, wow, Gilman, yeah, it's a cool school.
Right.
They've been our rivals for years. Good lacrosse. So I'm pretty sure it was the next day. It wasn't that night because we were still at Friendly's and
you're having a good night.
Not
You're enjoying the prize that night.
I was enjoying the prize. But the next morning, we called a guy named Harry Ford, Mac Ford, class 81 with me, great lacrosse player, good friend, went to North Carolina. But in any event, Mac and I and the Fords, we had known one another at a place called Sherwood Forest down in Annapolis, summer home. But we knew that Mac went to Gilman. And the next day, my mom and dad, somebody, called Harry Ford and said, Dell's interested in going to Gilman. Well, Mr. Ford was like, well, I know Reddy Finney, or Mr. Finney. I call him Mr. Finney. I'm going to call Mr. Finney right now. Well, I don't know, it was probably the next day. It was pretty soon. I was driving up into out in front of Cary Hall, and there came Mr. Finney out to see me, and I'm pretty sure he had his green khaki suit on, and he came out, and that's where I met the man. And next thing you know, I'm going to Gilman.
Awesome story.
Yeah.
It started at Friendly's, a little conversation, and it's like, if you want to play lacrosse, if you want to go to a really good academic school, you go to Gilman.
Yes.
Yeah.
I was very fortunate.
Yeah. So the reason I named the podcast Path to Follow is because there was a documentary about Reddy Finney that came out a couple of years ago, and it's called Path to Follow, and it's about his life and his influence on Gilman and on everyone who came to Gilman. What do you remember, other than the green suit and meeting him that first time? What was it like going to school with him as the leader, and maybe any memories come to mind with Reddy Finney?
Many memories. My last time I saw him was a number of years ago, I guess before he passed, was out at an airport, down BWI, and there he was. He came up and we talked. Great man. I have a number of memories, but the one would have to be that first day. Mm-hmm. And there's my mom, my dad, and me, and this gentleman comes up, and immediately you just feel his power and his gentleness. This might be one of those times where I get a little teary-eyed. Yeah. So, he comes up, and within, the first 10 minutes of, seeing the guy and being with him, you can feel his energy. You feel his sincerity. He's asking questions. He's looking you in the eye. He's a gentleman. And at the same time that he's doing this, he is scanning a 10-yard circumference looking for any piece of trash that happens to be on the ground, and he can talk to you, answer your questions, look you in the eye, pick up the trash, put it in his pocket, and apologize for that trash being there, all in the same motion. It was just great.
Oh my God.
He's like a special guy. I remember wrestling matches, you'd be in, or football, but I was playing, but the wrestling matches, you'd be there, and Mr. Finney would be watching, and, he was a great wrestler, and he had a lot of energy. But the joke was you don't want to sit next to Mr. Finney during a wrestling match, because he was moving the whole time, and that was great. And of course, when you started the cheers and the chants, if they remotely started to get a little distasteful or whatever, it would be like, the chants were going, and Mr. Finney, he would turn and look. There would be a hush. Everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Total respect, we had a lot of teachers here, and we had respect for the teachers, but you would joke about some or tease some and all. But Mr. Finney, no, nobody had anything but total respect for the man, and those are two memories.
Yeah.
He always used to have Finney's memories about each senior, and mine was Dressel's athletic prowess. So that meant a lot to me, and that Mr. Finney thought of me as
that's pretty cool.
That's how he remembered me. But I'm sure I could find other memories of Mr. Finney, but those are two big ones.
But he knew everyone's name. He knew what everyone was involved with. He knew he could greet you by name at any time. Every student, every parent. That's some of the memories that I've heard too. In addition to the wrestling matches and.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
He knew everybody's name.
Yeah. When you first came to Gilman, did you immediately make an impact and start playing on the lacrosse team, or what was it like kind of jumping into athletics here at Gilman after your transition from McDonogh? Like, did you pick up with the varsity team right away, because Gilman was so strong in lacrosse and athletics in those days? And how did you in your transition start to make an impact here on the lacrosse field specifically?
Mm-hmm. When I got here in my freshman year, I had heard that there was this guy named Jimmy Wilkerson, and he was a junior on the team. And Wilkie's one of the greatest athletes I've ever met. He's a nice guy, and I think his son, one of his children, comes here.
Yep.
Wilkie, yeah.
Yep.
And Wilkerson, I saw him, and he had started on the varsity lacrosse team as a freshman, and I'm pretty sure he started as a freshman on the football team. I'm pretty sure he did. But in any event, when I got here, everybody knew Jim Wilkerson, and I certainly had known that he started on the varsity lacrosse. So, in the back of my mind, I wasn't, sure that I was going to be the next freshman, but I saw that it was obtainable.
Mm-hmm.
And, if you would ask me a little later, like, who are some of the more influential people here at Gilman? Dave Allan. Dave Allan is going to be one of the people that I bring up. Mr. Allan was the coach of the varsity lacrosse team. So in any event, I can't say that I had any conversations with Coach Allan or anything. I don't know. Maybe he had heard that I was good at McDonogh. I don't know. Maybe, who knows what he had heard. But just went out like everybody else did in the spring. Mm-hmm. And, they were making cuts, and I wasn't getting cut. And the next thing you know is I'm on the varsity. And I started. We had Mike Davis. He was senior, Chunky Davis. He was captain of the football team. And he was the one who went up to Harvard. And he was about 5'2". And then we had Todd Parker, who was probably about 5'6". And then we had Dressel, who was 6 foot tall. And, it was pretty cool because people would hear, that this freshman was starting on the Gilman's team, and they would, from what I hear, they'd be saying, well, which one is he? They'd be like, he's the big guy in the middle. And things just took off from there. I remember my first game, I know Caesar's sitting here, we talk a little bit about Calvert Hall. We started out that year with the St. Mary's tournament, and we went down and we played boys Latin, and that was the only loss we had that year. I checked my cynosure before I came in here, and actually we lost 6-5. But then I think we played Roxeter. That's not a school anymore, but that was down there. But anyway, we played those two, and then we came back for the first MSA game, and that was a big deal. We played Calvert Hall over here. That was my first home game here, and it was a big deal. We won 6-5. But it took me a little while to get going. I was on the team, but as the season went along, I did pretty good. I did pretty good, and I think I contributed a lot. A number of games, I had some big games, and we wound up winning the championship. Played over at Towson, UMBC. We played over at UMBC, and other than that first loss that we had in the beginning, we went undefeated, and we wound up winning championship, and
This is all your freshman year. I mean, that's a pretty strong start to your Gilman career right there.
Yeah. Yes, it was. Yeah.
I mean, it couldn't be any better for you. It sounds like he's transferred. You started on the team. You're the 6-foot midfielder, up and down. You're contributing, and you're champions.
Yeah. Well, yes, it couldn't have been any better. I mean, maybe a little better. So we're out there playing against UMBC, right? And we're winning. And I'm pretty sure, I know I had 2 goals, and I had 1 assist. And we're going in, and we are up 10-9.
Who is this against? Sorry?
Against BL.
Oh, BL.
Yeah.
Yep.
They had beaten us in the beginning of the season by a goal. We beat them over at their house, and now we're playing them in the championship. Mm-hmm. And we're out there, and I remember it well. We were up by a goal, and Coach Allan and Chip Tompkins, he was the coach, we had it that you weren't supposed to shoot unless you had a wide open goal. Mm-hmm. That they put the clamp down. It's like, don't shoot. It's up 10-9. Don't shoot unless there's a wide open goal. At least that's how I remember it. So I remember it was about a minute and 30 seconds. I'm standing on the crease. I don't know. They're running around trying to get the ball. Somehow it's thrown to me. I turn. I shot the ball right in John Muchler's stick. They call timeout. The next thing you know, they pass the ball down. And Chris Ludford, with 1 minute, cranks his 4th goal, upper left corner. They tied it. So I was feeling a little small at the time because I blew it. Goes there. And I remember it well. We were standing on the sideline, and Mr. Allan, love him, but when he gets intense, he's got this real high-pitched voice. And I remember after Ludford cranks that goal, Mr. Allan, Dave's looking at Tompkins, and he's like, I need a midfielder. And Tompkins is like, well, Dressel's here. He goes, I said a midfielder. So, I felt like Fred Flintstone when Mr. Slate yells at him. I was like shrinking. I don't know if everyone in the audience remember that analogy, but, I felt a little humiliated. But we're asking how it could have been a little better. So in overtime, Wilkerson got the ball, threw it to me. I could have scored the game winner, and it would have been really cool. But I was not going to shoot it again after I blew that up one shot.
No.
So I passed it to Chunky Davis. He made a shot. We won. So I got the win and assist.
Yeah.
But it could have been a little better if I would have won the game.
Yeah.
But I'm happy with the way things went.
You won the game.
Yeah, I'll take it.
If you lost the game and you shot the ball, that would have been a lot worse.
That would have been bad. That would have been bad. Yeah.
Okay.
That would have been more like
So that was just a little blip in your freshman year.
Mm-hmm.
But you remember all the details pretty well. I mean,
I do.
I mean, yeah, I've definitely done that before, though. Shoot it when you're up. If you're on the crease, it's hard not to. You're right in front. I mean.
Yeah. We maybe we'll get to my last game at Hopkins and talk about that, because I had another bad experience with that. But let's not talk about that right now. Let's get back to something positive.
Well, yeah, let's get back to Gilman. So that was your freshman year,
right?
What happens after that at Gilman as an athlete playing sports here? Sophomore year, maybe we can talk about, or junior, senior year, whichever year is maybe most memorable for you.
Sure. Well, let's get the winter sports out of the way. I came in as a freshman. I attempted to wrestle for about a week and a half with Mr. Brown and over there. That was not for me. It was pretty cool for other people wrestling, but I didn't take to it well. So I wound up playing JV basketball for a year, and once those next 3 years, I took what's called winter lacrosse. But in the fall, when I transferred here, I had actually broken my foot, so I missed out on the beginning of the fall. But I wound up playing on the junior varsity football team. And then in my sophomore year, I was fortunate to be one of 3 sophomores to make the varsity, and played on a really cool team with Biff Poggi. He used to be a Francis Xavier Poggi. He was a senior. I played with him, and Wilkerson was a senior. We had a great football team, and that was a great year. We wound up beating McDonogh. We lost the championship to Poly. That was a tough loss. I could tell you about that. But then, unfortunately, junior and senior year lost to McDonogh. So all my friends over there who I had left, they were sort of glad to beat me and beat us. But we had pretty good football. Wound up junior year, I think Calvert Hall won it, but we had a good team. Senior year was the year after the great Alex Sotir had left. I had Mr. Sotir. I was blessed with having him coach me my sophomore and junior year. Senior year, we had a coach named Kevin Spencer come in. He did a great job. But my senior year, we wound up having a 50-50 record, and we actually went to the championship game against Poly. We played over at Towson. Towson, it was called Towson State back then, I believe. And we lost. But so football had some good. I was captain of the football team, and it was a good time. But lacrosse, we won that first year. Sophomore year, St. Paul's won. We had some good games.
You said your brothers were there, right? St. Paul's. You said your brothers were playing at St. Paul's, or?
My brothers were at St. Paul's. They were a number of years younger than me.
Gotcha.
And they weren't playing, but okay. St. Paul's
your sophomore
won.
Year. And
then junior year, Loyola won. And senior year here at Gilman, tough ending to that one. I'll tell you a little bit about that.
Yeah.
That was we had a great team. We have a number of players on there that went on to play in college. Had myself, Mac Ford, Joey Seivold. These are all Hall of Fame, first team All-American lacrosse players. We had a great team. And I'm pretty sure we were undefeated going into the last 2 games of the season. And we had to play St. Paul's on Family Day. It was a Saturday. And then the following week, play Boys Latin. So we played St. Paul's on Family Day. And we were ranked above them. And we lost. That's when I sort of should have learned a lesson that I should have sort of learned that I didn't learn. But you never change your stick before a big game. It was the day before, playing, and back then, when you string STX, you got like the 7 knots. Well, the night before the game, I restrung my stick and I double strung it. Instead of 7 knots, it was double strung, so there's 14 knots. It looked really cool. But when we went out there that next day, it was too tight. I think that was when I shot a lacrosse ball and it went up on Northern Parkway. In any event, I had a number of assists, but I couldn't hit the cage. But we had a bad game, and St. Paul's had a great game, so we lost to St. Paul's. Family day, all the people here. So we were still ranked above them, and all we had to do was beat Boys Latin the following weekend, Friday. And we had beaten them 16-4 earlier in the season. And it was a Friday afternoon. It was pouring down rain. I'm pretty sure the Hunt Cup or the Grand National, a horse race, was the next day. It was a Saturday. And it was raining. We were maybe going to call the game. But I think everyone didn't want to call the game and have to play it on a Saturday when the Hunt Cup or the Grand National was. So we played in a torrential downpour, and it neutralized our sticks. Guy Matrosini, defenseman for BL, wound up playing with me at Hopkins. He was all over the field. And in any event, we lost to BL. And that was tough.
And that was it, right?
That was it. We lost. And even though our record was as good as St. Paul's, both the News American and the Sun paper, the 2 newspapers at the time, they both ranked St. Paul's above us. So even though we had this great season, we lost the last 2 games.
Especially after beating BL 16-4.
Exactly.
Prior to that, it's tough.
Exactly. Now they loved it. I mean, I've seen their yearbook. You know, some friends, they were like, "Oh, the best day, beating Gilman." They loved it. So good for them. Good for them.
Wow. Well, you had some great teams. You played with some great players here at Gilman. Dave Allan, I got to coach with him my first year here at Gilman, which was a pretty cool experience. I love Coach Allan.
He's a great guy.
So it sounds like a successful lacrosse career at Gilman, and then you went on to Harvard for a little bit, and then to Hopkins, and maybe we can talk. We covered 84 a solid amount already, but 85, that was another. Was that an undefeated year at Hopkins, 1985 too?
No.
That was not undefeated. Okay.
No. Went down and lost to Carolina. I think that was our only defeat.
Okay.
But 85, what was cool about that, especially, was I played on first team midfield with my brother John. And not too many people can say that they ran a midfield and won a national championship with their brother. My brother John was 3 years younger than me. He actually went to Gilman. He didn't graduate from here. He wound up transferring up to Lawrenceville. But he came in as a freshman, and I was a junior. And one of my best friends at the time, Steve Muchler, his dad, Jim Muchler, was a Baltimore Colt. Steve Muchler, Loyola guy. Much, myself, and John, we got to run midfield together. And forgive me, I said first team. We actually ran second midfield. John Krummenacher, and we had New York. They ran first midfield. The New York team ran first midfield. We were second midfield. But we wound up playing Syracuse again, and we beat them 11-4 up at Brown. And
That's domination.
That was total domination. Les Matthews, actually his name's Greg Matthews, but there's a great surgeon here in town, Les Matthews. And we used to call Greg Matthews Les Matthews. And Les was a goalie at Hopkins, an All-American goalie. He's a great orthopedic surgeon. And anyway, Les Matthews, we used to joke with Les over a number of things, but he was into total domination. So that's where that started, and that was our saying for that year.
Wow.
Total domination.
And it was just one loss that year, but champions.
Yeah. I mean, it's pretty powerful when you got all of the guys getting in there before a game, and we all just look, and all we say is total, and you're looking at one another, and it just can move you. And of course, we had the talent to back it, and It was a good year.
You had some great slogans back in the 80s at Hopkins.
Yeah. I wish I had the T-shirts, because that week before the game, we got a T-shirt. I wish I had.
I hope we get a chance to see one, because when he lets it go, it just whistles, and he likes to shoot underneath the pipe, which is a very dramatic goal when you see it. Del Dressel in front, and a goal, and a 3-goal Johns Hopkins lead. Del Dressel's a leader, and late in the season, he went to the coach, told the coach that he thought he wasn't playing up to his capacity, his potential, and he started doing it. And again, last week in Virginia, he single-handedly brought this team back from a 6-1 deficit against the University of Virginia and put him in this final. Look at Dressel, nice roll back against the grain of the defenseman, comes in and fakes out the other defenseman for the right-handed shot. We'll take a look at it from the end zone one more time as Dressel takes the ball. Now watch, he feels the defenseman on his left, rolls inside him. The defenseman has no chance to get him a shot. Now watch him fake the right to the right-hand side, and with one fake, he takes the second shot. Nims, again, is getting some shots that are very difficult to save, and that can affect his confidence level.
So during this time when you were at Hopkins, how did you kind of figure out, along with lacrosse going on, what you wanted to do maybe afterwards? Because we can maybe talk about your career and what you studied at Hopkins and how you got into the medical field a little bit, if that's all right with you.
That's all right with
Okay.
me, but if we're going to talk about me becoming a doctor, I got that to thank my 2 G's, Gilman and God.
Yeah.
I was a senior here at Gilman, and I want to say it was the Encounter. I'm pretty sure. I'm not sure if they still do that. Do they still have the Gilman Encounter?
We do.
Yeah, you go out for
Yeah.
a month, or the last 3 weeks, whatever. So I don't know how it came about, but I'm a senior, and the year before, Hunt Brawley, he graduated, went to Duke, nice guy, lacrosse player with me. Hunt's dad, Robert Brawley, was a cardiac surgeon over at Hopkins, and I this is why I say God, I'm into God. I don't know how it came about, but somehow I got the idea that maybe I should go over and check out surgery. And talked to Hunt, talked to his dad. Next thing you know, I'm over doing my Encounter, where I had 3 weeks at Johns Hopkins and running around the Blaylock building. And, I was scrubbing. I scrubbed in, but I want to say I observed. I don't think I actually scrubbed in, but I was right there checking out all this heart surgery. And I remember this is a pretty cool story. Is I was there, and they had said in the room next door there was some neurosurgery going on. So I remember wanting to go in there. And opened up the door, and there was this gentleman sitting there, and I'm looking back, he must have been waiting for an x-ray before he closed up, but he's just sort of sitting in there with his hands in a sterile fashion, and skull was still open a little bit, and I went in and said, "Hey, I'm with Dr. Brawley, and can I check it out?" He's like, "Sure," and he gave me a couple words, and I walked out. It was Ben Carson.
No way.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
It's pretty cool.
That is. Wow.
Yeah.
And that's kind of when you...
So I met Ben Carson back in the day.
Yeah, during Encounter.
During an Encounter at Gilman. Yeah.
That's a cool experience.
Yeah. I doubt he's told the same story, but it's pretty cool. Yeah. So in any event, I don't know, right? I just started to think that I wanted to be a doctor. And when I went to Hopkins, pre-med is a big deal over there. And I just sort of started to chip away at it, and always kept in my mind that I'd be a doctor, maybe. I was busy playing lacrosse, but I did the pre-med, knocked it out.
It's a tough balance, playing lacrosse at that high of a level and doing pre-med and neuroscience. I mean, my dad told me this funny story, because I told him you were coming on, and he said one time, I think your lockers were next to each other or something one year, and my dad wasn't, a huge student, but he picked up the wrong book bag with all your books in it, and he got home and he was like, "What is this? He's reading a different language here." It's like, I have Dell's book bag.
That's funny. That's funny.
But it sounds like at Hopkins you kind of figured out that was what you wanted to do, and you put in the time investment to pursue that as a career.
I did. I just sort of kept it in the front of my mind that I'd be a doctor, and just doing the pre-med, I knew that in order to get into medical school, I had to do organic chemistry and physics and all of that, so I did it. And there's maybe a little bit of a month or two where I thought maybe I wanted to be a lawyer. My dad was a lawyer here in town. But I guess I just sort of knew I wanted to be a doctor. And fortunately, I was able to get into Tulane Medical School. And prior to that, I did some research with a wonderful individual, a guy named Dr. William Bell, Bill Bell. He was a great man. He's a hematologist. He was a hematologist at Hopkins. And during my last couple of years at Hopkins, I did some research over there with Dr. Bell, and I'd like to give him some thanks. He sort of helped me out with making the connection, getting into Tulane.
Mm-hmm.
Good grades. I got in there, but Dr. Bell was helpful in making that happen. So I love him for that.
Yeah, Hopkins was a perfect place for you then. And when you went to Tulane, what was your experience like at Tulane in medical school? What was it like going down there? From being from Baltimore your whole life, going down to Louisiana.
It was pretty cool, down in New Orleans.
Yeah.
They gave us all of the first 2 years you're in the classroom. Second, third, and fourth year you're doing like your doctoring stuff in the hospital. The first 2 years, we had all of our tests on Monday, and that was pretty cool because we would work hard and study over the weekend, and then Monday we'd take the test, and then you'd have 167 people running around the French Quarter on a Monday night. There wasn't a whole lot going on besides us. Yeah. But that was nice. It was I got some great memories of being down in New Orleans, working at Charity Hospital.
Yeah,
a lot went on down there. And I originally wanted to be a pediatric surgeon, and I could give you a whole lot of backstory to that, but when I came out of medical school, I actually did a surgical residency for a little bit of time, and then wound up being a psychiatrist.
And psychiatry brought you back to Baltimore. How long kind of after you finished up at med school? I know you have to do a residency, right? And then you can practice on your own psychiatry. Is that kind of how the profession follows? Is that what it looks like?
I did my psychiatry residency at UC Irvine from 92 to 95, and I had been going from Baltimore since I graduated in 86, so 86 to 95, I was at various places as New Orleans, Washington, D.C., California. And in 1995, I came back and accepted a job at Union Memorial Hospital, and that's where I got my start coming back. And I've been in town ever since being a psychiatrist.
Yeah, back in town. What is the psychiatry for someone who might want to pursue that occupation? What maybe word of advice or recommendations would you have for someone? Like, how did you really choose that path of psychiatry? I mean, going to medical school, you kind of have your options open, but psychiatry is something that always interested you, maybe? Is that kind of how you found psychiatry? Is just you just figured out that was something that you were really interested in from, encounter right away? Or was there a specific moment that you thought psychiatry is what I really want to do?
I'm thinking sometimes I've been accused, if somebody asks me what time it is, I build them a clock instead of just answering the question. And when you ask me a question like that, it's like, whoa, where do I start?
Right, that's good.
So, hey, we got time. No, the evolution of becoming a psychiatrist sort of happened, and it wasn't something that I just knew from the beginning. Mm-hmm. If anything, when I was in medical school, I had known some surgeons here in town, but I just sort of always thought maybe I'd be a surgeon. And when I was in medical school, between my first and my second year, I had a great experience. I came back at Hopkins over the summer, and I worked under the tutelage of Dr. Alex Haller. He was a great pediatric surgeon. He was the first person to separate Siamese twins. He was a famous doc. So I came back over the summer and worked in Hopkins, right down the street. And so I thought I wanted to be a pediatric surgeon. And then he introduced me down at Tulane to Dr. Moynihan. She had trained at Hopkins, and she was a pediatric surgeon down at Tulane. So I went down there, did a little research with her, and I was thinking I was going to be a pediatric surgeon. But in my third year, I fell in love with neurology and neurosurgery, and I wanted to be a neurosurgeon. So I was thinking maybe I'd be a pediatric neurosurgeon. But at the same time, I took a rotation with Dr. Dick Dalton from Duke. Dr. Dalton was a pediatric psychiatrist, and so I did a rotation with him. And that was different, the neurosurgery and the surgery. You get in at 5 in the morning, and you're a surgeon and all of that, and the psychiatry was just different. Mm-hmm. And I did a rotation on the child unit. Got a cute little story there. I remember the first day that I'm working on the kids unit, and there's a little kid who's a young little kid, and he had been traumatized, and I'm in there, and they said just go in and talk to him and figure it out. So we get down on the floor, and those little those little army, those little green things. You got the walkie-talkie guy and the bazooka guy and all that. So we dumped him out on the floor, and he's just sitting there playing around with that, and I'm trying to talk to him and asking him all these questions, and he wasn't talking to me. He just was grabbing little toys. He put the walkie-talkie guy in the middle, and then as I'm talking to him, he gradually took the bazooka guy, the sniper guy, and in a big circle, pointed them all around to the little walkie-talkie guy in the middle. Now, you don't have to be Sigmund Freud to figure out who he identified with. But I just remember that story, and I remember thinking, this is really neat. This is like a different kind of medicine where you're not operating. And I could work with kids. So I sort of tucked that away. And you can get to work at 8, and you can go home at 4. So I was sort of having this dilemma back then.
Yeah, different lifestyle maybe that you were considering.
It was different.
Yeah.
So I remember this. We had this surgeon, Dr. Larry Fox. Larry Fox was from Alabama. He was a pediatric cardiac surgeon, and he was the man. We med students knew Larry Fox, and he was a tough guy, and he would be the guy who you're there, and there was a Dr. Reddy who was the cardiac fellow. So this would be a surgeon who's had 5 years of general surgery, and then 2 years of cardiac to be the chief resident. And in any event, Larry would be if Reggie made a mistake, Larry would be like, Reggie, please step away from the table. You are killing my patient. Please fold your hand, back up. Reggie, you're killing my patient. So Larry Fox, he was the tough guy, and he was the surgeon. And I took that rotation because I sort of wanted to do the cardiac surgery. And I remember one day, 4 of us med students were there, and Larry finally paid some attention to me. He looks at me and goes, you, young Dressel, what kind of doctor do you want to be? said, well, sir, I'm not sure. On the one hand, I want to be a pediatric neurosurgeon. On the other hand, I think I might want to be a child psychiatrist.
That makes absolutely no sense. You either want to be a surgeon or not.
So I just think that's a funny story.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was a big thing. What do I want to do? And I wound up I figured I'd go for the neurosurgery first and see what happened. And I got a residency at GW. And I did a year of general surgery, and I started the first of 6 years as a neurosurgery resident at GW. And pretty cool, 5 months. And I just sort of knew that it wasn't for me. We could go way into why. There was a lot of things that happened that just made me realize this isn't what I want to do. So I left, and I'm sitting there thinking, now what do I want to be? I don't know. And then it just dawned on me. I'd had that great experience in psychiatry, and I just went into psychiatry. So in a long-winded way, I'm sort of answering your question. It wasn't really like I'd been like wanting to be a psychiatrist my whole life, or that it was my calling. It just sort of happened. And the next thing you know, I'm in Southern California, driving all over Southern California. Young, single guy, having fun, trying to learn how to surf, growing my hair long back when I could, and becoming a psychiatrist. And it was a cool thing.
What as a psychiatrist, what does a typical day look like? Like, what kind of issues or topics or types of people do you deal with on a daily basis for your job? What is that like?
Well, in my almost 30 years of being a psychiatrist, I've done different kinds of psychiatry, and I have had the private practice out there and seen people for half-hour med checks where we talk about their medicine once a month, or see people for psychotherapy an hour once a week. But for the last 10 years, I've I'll hope to stay there for a long time. I'm actually a psychiatrist out at Spring Grove State Mental Facility out in Catonsville, and I work on an inpatient unit, and it's 25 male patients, and that's what I do. The patients that come to us out at Spring Grove, there's most of them, pretty much all of them, have had some kind of legal involvement. They've either been charged with what I call the junior varsity offenses. The varsity offenders, the murderers, and the bigger, more serious charges go to a place called Clifton Perkins. There's 4 regional hospitals. Spring Grove's one of them. And we get the junior varsity offenders. But I like to say that some of our players could have made the varsity. We've got some tough people out there. But we have people come out who have legal charges, and they're either out there to be restored to competency, or they're evaluated for criminal responsibility, and name it. That's what I do. They come in, and we have different types of patients that come in, and they all most of them have a legal involvement. And the patients stay, for the most part, a number of months. It's not like a community hospital where people come in for 3 or 4 days, and when you're safe, you get discharged. So I like it. What
kind of psychological issues do these people have when they come to you? What are some of the common issues that they are diagnosed with?
Yeah, I'll answer that question. As a psychiatrist, I'm sort of instinctually get cautious when I start talking about what I do and the types of people, because it's a sensitive subject, and I'm respectful that there's various degrees of mental illness out there in the community. And so when I'm asked a question like that, my first reflex is to be cautious, just because I'm respectful. But certainly alcohol and substance abuse is out there in the world and colors an awful lot of mental illness. But an awful lot of the patients that come have a major schizophrenia, a major bipolar disorder. They have a major mood or psychotic disorder, and some of them sprinkle substance abuses in. We certainly also have some patients who are more antisocial personality, where they're more have personality issues, but even there, you sort of sprinkle the major mental illnesses of a schizophrenia or a bipolar, and of course trauma, PTSD. That's something that can't really be underestimated, how much trauma is out there and has affected people. But those are the biggies. I'm sure major depression, of course, is something that comes into play. But that's what comes to mind.
Yeah, interesting. Sounds like, I'm sure it's a job, like, it sounds, very interesting what you do. It's sure it's something that you enjoy and find fulfilling, and it sounds like you want to continue to do that. It's cool. Thanks for sharing.
You're welcome.
The book you brought in, maybe we can talk a little bit about the recommendation for today that you chose to bring in. What'd you choose?
I chose this book called The Spirit in the Stick. And it just sort of came to me this morning. You had let me know that I was bring a book, and I don't really have that book where I can remember reading something that really moved me in my life. I was going to bring in the complete works of Sherlock Holmes. That's what I'm reading now, and I was ready to tell you that my mom had bought it for my dad. My dad was an attorney. He was into Sherlock Holmes, and my mom bought it, and I've had this book for all these years, and I read it at night, and that's my second book to talk about.
That's on the next episode.
That's the next episode. But this morning, it just came to me. It's like, wow.
Spirit in the Stick.
Spirit of the Stick.
What's this about?
Well, I'll tell you. Yeah. This is a book here, and since I'm a lacrosse player, and some people who are watching might know that I play lacrosse, I'm doing a little commercial for this book.
They do now.
Yeah, this is a great book. This and it was pretty cool too, because I got it out of storage. Haven't read it in a while, and opened it up in January 14th, 2007. My brother gave me this, and gave me a nice little letter there. So that was cool. But this book was written by a Naval Academy graduate, and it talks about a young boy who gets a 200-year-old lacrosse stick. And I don't want to ruin the story, but it's a beautiful story. And it's only 200 pages, which is something that I can read, because I sometimes have trouble getting through the long books. It's even got big letters.
Big font.
Yeah, but this is, it's a story of a little boy who inherits a stick that's 200 years of age, and it goes back and talks about where it's been for all of these years. Great, lacrosse players like Jack Turnbull, or Doug Turnbull, the brother Jack and Doug, and Jimmy Lewis, and some other great players in there. It's just a beautiful story, and I read it years ago, and I loved it. And I'm on page 104. When I was reading it, I was like, whoa, and my number was 4 at Hopkins. And all of a sudden, I'm like reading it, like, hey, they got my name in there. Page 104, so I thought it was a message.
Are you one of the people who had the stick in the
No,
store?
they just put it in there as being a 4-time first-team All-American. So that's the book.
Awesome.
That I recommend.
There are too few books about lacrosse out there, so that's interesting. I'll have to pick that up. I'll have to get that for my dad. He likes the big font too. He likes the 200-page big font.
I just wish there was pictures in here.
Yeah, there should be some.
There should be.
Dale, it's been a great episode. It's been a lot of fun talking to you today. Thanks so much for coming on the podcast, and hopefully we see you at some lacrosse games this spring.
Well, thank you.
Yeah,
Thanks for having me.
For sure.
Thanks.
See you soon.
Okay.